All right, 888-727-BECK, 888-727-BECK. We didn't get to little troll Helen Thomas. And, man, when you see this video, you will see a troll. Does she not look like a troll? Like, stop tramping on my bridge or I'll come up there, you billy goat scruff, and gobble you up. Jeez. Anyway, she's talking about Israel, as she always does. She's talking about the Middle East and America's role in all of that.
We do have to change our attitudes. We have to be better to the Palestinians, be more fair in the Middle East. I mean, our reputation is not great in the Arab world or North Africa.
I'm worried about that.
We've not always been on God's side.
We haven't always been on God's side in the Middle East. Okay. Really? God's on the Palestinian side? He's on the Arab side? He's on the Muslim side? Is that what you're saying, Helen? Because my Bible, I think, says something a little different than that. I mean, come on.
With respect to democracy, there is a call for democracy in Egypt. They may get it. We've had our challenges here, too, with freedom of speech and with talking about, well, in particular, Middle East issues. You fell afoul of that yourself. What do we need to be talking about here that we're currently not discussing?
You can't talk about Israel.
You can't talk about
off
Israel.
limits in this whole country.
In this whole country.
You say so, you're anti-Semitic, you're this and that.
Oh, my gosh.
You're for the Holocaust, and you're for Hitler, and all of this nut stuff, this baloney that's been fed to the American people.
Mm-hmm.
I have a right to take a stand for decency and kindness to people.
Yeah,
and
really?
people who live under occupation, under the heel.
And what about people who live under bridges
I'll
like you?
always be sympathetic to.
Okay, all right, I see. Okay, so these poor, picked-on Palestinians, this is the rhetoric of the left. They're living under the heel of the oppressive Israelis. What, are you kidding me? This is madness. Why don't these people wake up, check into history, find out who really lived on that land? Which for hundreds of years was virtually no one, but it certainly wasn't ever Palestinian land. Biblical times, it belonged to Israel for thousands of years. The Jews lived there. God, and then she wants him. Here's what got her into trouble in the first place, and this is what she says.
You can't talk about Israel without being a Holocaust denier and for Hitler.
Here's what she said.
Yeah, and we're any comments on Israel? We're asking everybody today. Any comments on Israel?
Tell them to get the hell out of Palestine.
Any better comments?
Remember, these people are occupied, and it's their land.
What? No,
not
it isn't.
German, it's not Poland.
So where should they go? What should they do?
They go home.
Where's the home?
Poland.
So the Jews,
Germany.
The Jews go back to Poland and Germany.
And America and everywhere else.
Oh, okay. I see.
Why push people out of there who had lived there for centuries?
Okay. Again, the Jews had lived there for thousands and thousands of years. Had they been displaced? Yes. Did they wind up in places like Poland and Germany and America? Yes, but that's not where they're from. That's not their home.
Time to go home. Time to go back where they were persecuted and killed in the first.
And that's where the Holocaust thing came from.
Time to go back to Poland.
That's where Auschwitz is! You idiot! You moron!
I hear it's beautiful this time of year, though.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. Jeez. I mean, this is something else. And she's not going to, and she acts like she's been so persecuted. And I hate going back over the same old tired territory of reminding people how this Palestinian issue began in the first place. They could have had their freaking homeland. It was given to them. They partitioned off 2 sections of land in 1947. The UN gave a homeland to the Jews, Israel. They gave a homeland to the Palestinians called Palestine. They could have had the exact same territory. They said no.
Doesn't matter.
Why?
It doesn't matter because...
Why can't they understand that, though?
Because you're thinking like a Westerner.
Yeah.
Okay?
All right.
And that's what we were told, Glenn and I, when we were in Israel. Stop thinking like a Westerner.
Oh, really? By Palestinians?
Because the point is that they believe
you and Glenn, for those who may not know, went to Israel together when he was doing the Tampa show.
He was doing national then. He was
doing national.
Yeah.
He just called you and had you go.
Yeah,
and so that was
to slub around with. And
2003, 2004.
Yeah,
somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Okay, so they told you what?
And they said, stop thinking like a Westerner, because they believe that, like when you're negotiating with them, if you say, like when you go to wheel and deal, at the tables in the old city, you'll say, how much is that? And they'll give you a price, say $1. And if you go, oh, okay, I got $1. And they'll go, oh, no, you meant that piece right there? No, that's $1.50. Because they believe that if you're willing to give up something right now, you're willing to give up more. So
that's interesting.
If you were like, if I say, hey, how much is that? And the guy says $1, and I was like, oh, $1 for that? All right, 80 cents.
Then you'd get it for $1.
Then you start getting or less. Then they start wheeling and dealing with you because you didn't want to pay what they first offered.
So the UN's mistake was to give them the land in the first place. They should have.
Right. That's exactly right.
So
they should have said, we're going to give you this little piece of rock right here. That's where you got to live. Stand right there on that rock. That's your house.
And then no more.
And then they would have said, but we want this over here. Okay, fine. But see, it still wouldn't have been enough.
No,
really,
that's true.
Because it never ends up being enough.
That's the way it started. Is in 1947 they said, no, we want the whole area. We don't want the Jews to have any of it.
Right.
And so they got together with their Arab friends and they went to war with Israel, and Israel kicked their ass. And then it happened again in 1956. They got together with the Arab world, and the Palestinians were supposedly picked on, and the Arabs came to their rescue, and Israel kicked their ass again. And then it happened again in 1967. The entire Arab world, Egypt included at that time, Egypt, Syria, Libya, Lebanon, the whole area around them went to war against Israel. And Israel defeated those forces in 6 days. That's when they finally said, look, we're sick of this, okay? We're tired of you guys using this area as a staging ground for war against us. We're keeping it, and we're going to police it with our people, and we're going to settle it, and we're going to put a buffer zone between us and you, because we can't have this anymore. We tried to live in peace. We can't. And that's when they started patrolling the area. That's when they took control of the areas. They have since given much of it back, including the Sinai Peninsula, back to Egypt. They've given the Golan Heights back. They've given the West Bank back to the Palestinians.
Golan Heights, though, they can't give that up completely.
Not completely.
Ever.
No, that's true, because there's high ground there
when you're up there looking down on Israel, and trust me when I say looking down on Israel, you are literally it's just taking pot shots at the country.
Yeah.
I mean, let's shoot ridiculous. Over here for a while. That's a missile here for a while.
And they want that back in its entirety. They want the Gaza Strip, which they've been given. They want all of the West Bank. They want all of Israel. And what they say they'll settle for is half of Jerusalem. Well, that's your capital city. No, you're not getting it. And this two-state plan that we're talking about, the roadmap to peace, supposedly, which is really a roadmap to annihilation, I think. But it calls for splitting Jerusalem in half and giving East Jerusalem to the Palestinians. Can you imagine if Canada had some conflict with us and they said, we want part of Washington, D.C. as our own? Well, that's our nation's capital. No. Can you imagine ever giving that to them? No. No one would.
No.
Who's going to give up their capital city?
One side a train, the other side a Mountie. It's not going to happen.
No. It's just not going to happen. And so this is the battle that's been raging over and over and over. And by the way, it happened again in 1973. Egypt, Syria, the entire Arab world went to war against Israel again. Even after getting their butts kicked in 67 in 6 days, they tried it again in 73. And Israel won again. Finally, in 78 and 79, I think Sadat was a little fed up with getting his head handed to him every few years. And I think Menachem Begin was a little tired of warring with everybody around them. And so they finally got together with Jimmy Carter and signed the peace accord. So Egypt has been out of this loop for a long time. But that didn't stop everybody else from going to war with them again in 1981. Jeez. And they've since had to go to war with Lebanon how many times? And over and over and over, do the Israelis police the area for security's sake? You bet they do. I don't blame them.
And they're serious about it, too.
They're dang serious about it. And they built a fence, which has worked, by the way. They built a fence between them and the Palestinians because they continued to have suicide bombers walk into their synagogues, their restaurants, their school buses on the way to school with children blowing up, killing 30, 40 people at a time. They got a little tired of it. So, yeah, do they police? Do they check? Are there checkpoints? Of course, there must be. If that's the oppression you're talking about, tough. Deal with it. Until such time as you can sign a peace accord and mean it. Why, then maybe there can be peace. But this whole nonsense of Israel being the oppressor and being the occupier is horse poop.
Plus, using your example of Canada and the United States is a little, well, a lot different, really, because that's the way Americans see it. You know, the United States, Canada's way the heck up there. In the Middle East, it's not that way.
No, you're connected.
They are neck and neck. I mean, you go around the corner, you're in Jordan.
Yep.
You're in Jerusalem, and you go around the corner, oh, that's Jordan. And you go, oh, there's Lebanon. It's so close. It's not like the United States. It's really strange. And so when you talk about guarding and being alert and being on edge, you are all the time.
And by the way, they constantly complain about all of the security measures. They constantly complain about the occupied territory. You know who occupies twice as much territory as Israel does that supposedly belongs to the Palestinians? Jordan. And it used to be Jordan that the Palestinians focused on because they had so much more of their land. And they would attack, they would terrorize the Jordanians, and so the Jordanians would respond by finding the terrorists, killing them, cutting them into pieces, and sending their body parts to their family members and saying, oh, by the way, anybody else comes, we'll send them to you as well. How do you like that? And it ended. I mean, it's a pretty good way to fight terrorism, really, when you think about it. They're serious about it. I mean, Jordan, they don't care. They didn't at the time anyway. And since, they've decided to focus on Israel because they're a little softer.
And everybody, that's the easy kid in the parking lot to pick on.
Yep, because they get all the help in the world from the UN. The UN has what have they levied, like 250 resolutions against Israel or something?
Is that right? I don't know. I don't
it's something
know
like 250 resolutions against Israel. How many against Hamas and Hezbollah?
Oh, they probably have tea with them.
0.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, none. How many against Egypt? How many against Jordan? How many against Syria? None. They don't. It's always Israel. Always.